Let's make a start. Next up is OneID, and presenting on their behalf today is Adrian Field. So Adrian has a background in banking with Lloyds Banking Group and payments with Visa, and he now leads OneID's market development to enable a bank-based identity scheme for the UK to grow and succeed. Adrian's worked on developing global open standards for identity and global projects to connect identity schemes internationally. Welcome to you.
Okay, so good afternoon, Just. So what's OneID? I'm just going to give you a tour of what we do and how we do it, and particularly in the age verification space, which is where we started with the first product. Essentially, we've learned from digital identity schemes in other markets, and particularly things like the bank ID schemes in the Nordics, to design a service where anyone can prove who they are online and prove their age online in a really easy process using things that they already have. Is kind of the concept, and it makes it really fast and safe to get through, because we're building on the bank investment in open banking and open banking technology, with a social purpose to try and solve for fraud, online safety, some of the things the problems that exist in the world, particularly online, because people don't have a proper identity. So it's a really fast process. We don't store any data. The data's already been verified and is stored by your bank. We're just the data broker and orchestrator under the UK framework. There's no new app you have to install with us. There's no account you have to set up with us. You've already got the credentials you need to log into your bank, whether that's via an app or via a desktop. You already have what you need to get through our process on your devices. And because we're layering on top of the banks, there's security layers for the APIs. We're regulated by the FCA to actually get access to all the open banking certificates and to get to the data, and all of the behavioural biometrics, all the kind of things that the banks layer in as well. And all the fraud checks, the banks do that. We do additional fraud checks as well. Makes it a very secure process. And it's also very inclusive. So if you look at the number of people that have documents, and in terms of passports and driving licenses, the number of people who do online banking these days is actually more than people who have ID documents. So it's a more inclusive process, gives you optionality in terms of how you get people through what you're doing. And it's much quicker. So the typical process of, if I'm trying to get to a service online, typically if I've got to download a new app, I've then got to go to the App Store. I've got to be at home because my passport's at home. I've then got to log in, scan the document. Some people struggle with kind of using that kind of technology. I've then got to do the selfie check, which is the kind of in, out, shake it all about, the kind of ID hokey-cokey to get the device to recognise me. And once I've got through that process, I get to the GPG medium-high standard of whatever I need to do that, get access to that service. So in our world, bottom left to this slide, the customer's already done that. You've already been through the bank KYC process. You've done that kind of verification to get the bank in the account in the first place. That might have been a long time ago, so you've got all that transaction history as well, of activity history against that account to make sure it's safe. And then we come along at a later point in the process, and it's just a button. All the customer has to do is click the button, authenticate with their bank app, and then go through. So you can actually get through to the service you're trying to do. What's the job you're trying to do? Really easily. You can do that anywhere you want. It's all mobile and desktop based, but if you're out and about, you don't need to be at home where your document is to be able to get through to that process. We'll go to the next slide. That's it. So there's not many providers that are both regulated by the FCA for open banking, account information service provider, and certified under the DCIT framework. So we're covered both of those, and covered for all the additional use cases such as DBS, right to work, right to rent. We do through a partner as well, so we can do document scanning, because the Home Office rules say you have to scan a UK or Irish passport for those things. And we're also certified for a KYC AML use case. So we look through all the money laundering regs and all the different guidance from various industries to say, what do you need to do as an electronic ID provider? And we're certified by ACCS to do all those things as well. And it's a 100% digital process, so there's no kind of digitisation has happened already. And we're also B Corp as well, so the social purpose of what we're trying to do. So this is kind of how it all fits together. Just in terms of talking you through the flow. So left-hand side, an individual, this is where you have our button or SDK. Could be on an app or a website. Customer clicks that. They then, through open standards, OpenID Connect, it's all OpenID Connect based. Our kind of aligned parties implement that. They can then call through to us as the customer. They go through the security layer of all the API checking, strong customer authentication, so you know it's the right person, real person, liveness checks through all of that. Your data is then distributed across different banks, whoever you pick through that process, and it can be a different bank if you want to kind of segment and manage your interactions online with different bank accounts. Most people in the UK have at least 2 bank accounts these days. I can do that. We can then do additional data checks, so telco, government, when they open up the kind of legal gateway to get additional data. We're plugged into fraud industry databases to do kind of step up to a high level of assurance as well. So that's how the whole thing flows around, and it's really quick. Well, I'll show you in the demo how fast it is to get through that process. So just a bit about our privacy model, given the kind of audience here, well aware of data protection, how you protect privacy and make it private. It's actually a 3 data controller model. So your bank's the data controller, they've already got your data. We're a data controller for the kind of milliseconds that we're actually processing the data. And then the relying party is the 3rd data controller. You're giving permission and consent to share your data with that new data controller through the end. But it's actually somewhere between the double blind and triple blind in terms of who knows what about which party. So the bank doesn't necessarily know who the relying party is. The relying party doesn't necessarily know who the bank is. And we don't always know who the customer is because we don't store the data ourselves. So it's a very secure and privacy respecting, privacy by design model, because you're limiting, it's the bare minimum of data that each party has on those things. There are some use cases, for instance, if you're doing e-commerce transaction, the relying party does know who the bank is because you've got payment credentials in there, so like card numbers and things like that. You can do this to some degree, but it depends on the use case as to how private you can make things. And because of the nature of what we're doing, as I said, it's around 90% of the UK does online banking now, which equates to around 50 million adults in the UK. So it's very good coverage. And if you look at even big tech, Google and Apple have about half the UK market. So even if everyone used their wallets, they still only have kind of 25 million each. The NHS, which was mostly driven through COVID, has around 30 million users. And ID documents, I think it's around about 87% have passports, only 75% have driving licenses. So again, it's kind of more inclusive because of the number of banks and the penetration of online banking. So the basic, it's the kind of typical online banking login process, which you may have done through other transactions. And what we're advising the industry is that if we can come up with this common approach of giving customers control of their data, letting me consent to share that data from A to B, giving me a strong customer authentication way of authenticating with the data source that it is me and that it is my data, and then a secure mechanism, secure API of sharing that data, transferring it from A to B as a common approach. We've already got it in the UK with open banking. Other countries have got similar approaches as well. We can start to join those up to do cross-border use cases. But if I can use this kind of model to do, say open finance, open data, share my health data, share my telco data, share my government data, I'm then in control. The GDPR right of data portability then becomes really easy. I can actually just click some buttons, prove that it's my data, and consent to do whatever I need to do with my data. So this is a quick demo, which I'll talk you through. Does this autoplay? Yes. So this is just an age verification use case where I'm just logging in. In this case, it's name and flag over 18. We have a bank picker connected to all the main UK banks. In this case, I'll choose Starling. I then consent to share the data, hand it off to Starling, do strong customer authentication with biometrics, log in there. There's another continue button. With some of the banks are different in terms of what they show to the customer, and then we hand back to the relying party. So secure journey, and then we just show the data that you get at the end. In this case, it's a name. A lot of our customers actually want the name and the age because they're shipping some goods, so they need the name address anyway. They need some payment credentials within that, so it's not data oversharing, but they don't necessarily need my date of birth. They just need to know age over 18, yes or no. And we give a subject identifier is unique for each customer and unique for that customer for that relying party. And it's the same kind of token every time that customer logs into the bank. So if the customer comes back, the retailer knows it's the same person, but you can't tell from that subject ID who the bank was, but it's unique and persistent for that person each time. And you get a unique transaction identifier as well. So for tracing for issues, we can report that and track things through the system. In terms of looking at the good work that ACCS done and the report that was commissioned by the regulators, where open banking actually comes out fairly strong on this model with in terms of the accuracy, one of the measures of effectiveness of age assurance solutions. Open banking scores 99.99 because the banks are heavily regulated to do the KYC properly, to know how old their customers are. If you have things like credit products, for instance, the bank's got to prove you're over 18 legally to give you access to that product. So it's a pretty safe and secure and accurate way of checking age. And it's age verification rather than estimation. So on your 18th birthday, you can go out, prove who you are, legally buy a beer. There's no kind of age band that we have to adhere to. And there was only one provider in this report, and that's us. There is only one OneID. And again, I'm sure you've kind of seen the report in terms of highly effective for age assurance with open banking in there. I think Tony gave a talk yesterday about this in terms of, is this the right model? Is this the right metrics to look? It's a starting point to say, what are these accuracy bands? How do we measure this? How do we measure the other criteria within the age assurance effectiveness model? And this will probably evolve as we go forward in terms of looking at what are the problems you're trying to fix and who for, and where do the age issues occur on this spectrum? Are some of these too high? We don't really know yet, but it's a good starting point. And last slide, finally, so you can try this yourself. So we have a demo site. If you use online banking, if you scan that, it'll go through to the URL that's on the bottom. Just in terms of talking through what you'll actually see, it's the video demo from before. You'll see a £60 thing in there. It won't charge you any money. We don't store any of the data. The data will be transferred. It will be your real data. Will go through. It's a kind of demo sandbox environment. The data will be sent through to the browser on your device. Once you close the browser, the data is deleted. We don't store any of it, so it's all kind of safe to try. But if you want to look through the journey yourself and just kind of see, every bank does strong customer authentication slightly differently, but for each customer, you're familiar with your own bank anyway, so you know how to get through the process. That's it in terms of the talk. Is there any questions?
Hi, Jason Sheep from Post Office. So SCA permits the use of device biometrics. Device biometrics, I can have anyone's fingerprint in there. How do I know the individual that's sharing the identity is the owner of the identity with OneID? So
this is where you got the bank terms and conditions essentially, and Apple also advise you don't set up multiple touch or face IDs on the same device because it does lead to complications unless you kind of set them to log into the different user profiles on that device, and then the banks will kind of know that there's multiple users of that device and be able to generate secure tokens in the secure element on that device for different people. So you can't, it's very unlikely you can get access through SCA to somebody else's bank account. Of course, it doesn't prevent people sharing that, but then you're in the kind of family permission type territory where no solution's really going to solve for those things.
Except for direct biometric comparison.
Yes, exactly. So if it's just PIN passcode, you can give that. You can give your credit card to your child to go down to the shop and buy some sweets, but you don't know whether they're buying alcohol or something else on it. Same way you can give access online to your children to do stuff. The banks do actually do behavioural biometrics and other checks in the background to say, even if someone's got my PIN code on my device, how quickly are they typing it in? How much pressure on the kind of touchpad are they putting into that? Or if it's a desktop, how quickly are they moving the mouse across the screen? So all of those kind of things are running in the background as well to be able to flag fraudsters. And stuff like, how quickly, if you're form filling, how quickly the data's typed into the field. So is it kind of people make typos, they backtrack and then retype it? If it's a copy and paste, it's more likely to be a fraudster attacking. All those kind of things are picked up as well. Should we? Sorry,
Just
go there because
Paco Garcia from Georgie. Just a quick question, because I understand the open banking doesn't make the date of birth a mandatory attribute, which means that it's down to the bank to choose to make that data point available through open banking. So do you have any stats on how many UK banks provide the date of birth through open banking? What do you do for those customers that don't have a bank that provide that data point?
Yes, no, great question, and probably should have covered this, but it's so essentially PSD2 is where open banking came from, European legislation. PSD2 is all about getting access to my bank transaction data and triggering a payment. That's all it is. It's got nothing to do with identity. The IDAS covers the identity in Europe. So what we're doing in the UK, all the mandated free APIs don't give you any identity data, or you might just get the name of the account. Doesn't necessarily match the name of the person. You don't get date of birth, address, and all those kind of things. So we're partnering with the banks to get them to build commercial APIs to surface that data on behalf of their customer to be able to share onwards, and we can do that for the whole of the market.
Jutta Kroll from the German Digital Opportunities Foundation. I have two questions.
Okay.
One question would be, as of which age have usually uses a banking account? Would that work also for under 16s, under 13s? And the second question is, in your example, the bank Starling, do they know from which company service provider came the request to know the age of the user to verify? Yes, these are my two questions.
Yeah, so on the second one first, so the double blinding, the bank doesn't necessarily know who the relying party is. They might do if there's a payment involved, but generally, no, we don't share who the bank is to the relying party, and the vice versa. The relying party doesn't know who the bank, which bank you've selected through that process. They just get a standard set of data, OpenID Connect, KYC, identity assurance data through that process. And then the first question is actually something we're trying to work with the banks to say, if you can help us, what's the kind of parental consent model of, so Starling, for instance, have something called a kite card. So you can give your kids cards to but it's not a separate account, it's connected to your current account. And because it's, vulnerable statistics and vulnerable data, we're looking at how we can help kind of make things safer online without creating new risks, because you're kind of sharing those kind of things. So we normally say for age verification, we can do positive verification for adults, i.e. I am over 18 and I can prove that. It's harder to do, I can prove I'm a child, I'm 15, 16, whatever. But it's definitely kind of roadmap thing to say, look, let's try and work on that.
Steve. Thanks. Steve Hanover from Consort Hyperion. So actually following on from that, I was thinking more generally, how do you deal with joint accounts?
So joint accounts, so what we actually get from the banks is who's logging into that account. So It could be the same account, but actually if you've got husband and wife, we know which partner is logging in to get to that process. So
they'll pass back a attribute related to that person.
Yeah, so they get a separate subject identifier, even though it's a joint account. The account details will be the same, but the person is different, and subject identifier, their date of birth is different, etc.
There is a related issue potentially in that I just checked on Barclays. On my Barclays account, I can see any data that's been shared, regardless of who it's related to. So there might be some privacy issues there if I want to share my data, but I don't want the other account holder to know that I've shared that data, for example.
Is this in terms of payments and messaging in payments?
Open banking, PSD2 related. On the Barclays website says that if you share data from your account, then any joint account holder can see that that data's been shared, if I've understood it correctly.
Okay, I don't quite know how Barclays do it in terms of like consent.
Yeah,
and
it's just,
management.
I haven't researched it, I just literally just looked it up.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking, what are the issues with joint accounts? And obviously do you know which account holder it is? Well, you've answered that. But there's the other end, which is, well, should everyone know what data's been shared, or should that actually be restricted? So that only, if I've shared data, only I can see that data, and my joint account holder cannot see that I've shared that data.
Yeah, so it's almost as if it's a separate account. So it's the same account, different person, but the different person is sharing their details. Those two people are not aware of what the other one is doing.
That's not what Barclays website says.
It's maybe different for open banking in terms of they might be talking about transaction data because it is just one account, but it's two people. So
Maybe, yeah, with something to look into, I think.
Yeah. But there certainly is, data protection, existing things in data protection where if I make a payment to you and I put your name in the payment message, then there's data on both sides of who that payment is going to. So, anyone else? That's it. So, thank you for attending. Come around to the stall and chat if you'd like to know some more. And please try out and have a go. Thank you.